Hey there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jess with So Many Creations. In this video, I'm going to walk you step by step through my Jane Cork Wallet pattern. I'm so excited to share this with you. If you think I'm obsessed, you should see the rest of the pile. And I've been carrying one myself for quite a while now, and I find that for me, it's the perfect wallet. It holds everything I need, not too much, not too big, and because it's made out of cork, it's actually really lightweight. So let's take a look at the wallet before we get into our supply list. On the back here is a zippered pocket for your change, but I did it a little bit differently this time. This is actually a gusseted pocket. I thought that was really fun. It's something I hadn't included in a pattern before, so I wanted to try that out. You might also notice it's a little sparkly back here. That is because I used a piece of heat transfer vinyl. Now, full disclosure, I was not planning on doing that, but as the video went on, I decided that might be kind of fun. And if you watch my notebook cover video, you know that I'm kind of obsessed with heat transfer vinyl right at the moment. Totally optional, you can skip it. You'll see in this sample right here, I didn't add anything, and you just see the back of the cork, so it's totally fine. On the front here is a flap closure. You can use any type of closure that you like. This right here is just a little snap set with my rivet setter. You can also use a twist lock. You could use a flip lock, a magnet, a button, anything that you like. Under my flap is a large outside pocket. You can fit your cell phone in there if you would like. Underneath that is going to be even more pockets. So I've got my pocket right here and another pocket right here, perfect size for cash or even your checkbook, whatever you need to carry. You have your ID window, and up here, this is the part I'm super excited about. 7 credit card pockets, 7. I have mine full right now. I probably have at least 2 in each of these pockets. They're holding really well. The only thing that you're going to need aside from your cork as far as materials is you're going to need something for your credit card slots. We're going to go over that in the next step, and as we're working through the video, I'll show you some of the things I found really work well. The thinner the better. That's my biggest tip for you, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. You need a little piece of vinyl here for your ID window, and that's pretty much it. A zipper, cork, and a few other small supplies, plus your regular sewing supplies. Now, I made this entire wallet on my domestic. I used my Janome Skyline S9 and I had no issues. If you want to make this, you just want to pick something that is non-fraying. So you can use cork like I did. You can also use vinyl, a thin leather, whatever your machine can handle. On some spots, there's going to be up to 5 layers of that material. So just make sure that your machine can handle it. If you have a heavy duty or an industrial, you know that you can go through pretty much anything. But for those of us with domestics, you can totally make this on your domestic. All right, so that's it. That's the wallet. Now you may also notice that there is not a wrist strap or a handle of any kind. For me, this is just a wallet. This is not something that I'm going to carry crossbody or wear over my shoulder. But if you would like to do that, I will at the end add some bonus content where you can see some different options on ways that you can add a wrist strap or a handle. If you like videos like this, don't forget to click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give it a thumbs up. All right, let's get into it. I've gathered all of the supplies that I'm going to need for today, and I'm going to do this in 2 phases. This is going to be all of the things that I'm going to need, the items that the pattern calls for, and then in the next part, I'm going to show you some of the additional things that I'm going to be adding and using for my wallet. Unfortunately, there's just so many things out there right now that it's hard to include every single thing in the pattern. So what I'm going to do is just go over all of the basics with you, and then if you want to add some other things or do a different kind of closure, we'll go over that in the next part. So first thing is I have all of my cork pieces. I cut them as per the pattern. I have labeled them on the back with a chalk pencil just so I know which one is which. So I have A, which is my outside. I have B, which is going to be my outside front pocket. I have C for my lining. I also have D and E. Those are for my credit card and my ID pockets. And then I have my 2 F pieces. That is for the zippered outside pocket. So those are all cut as per the pattern. I am also going to go over how to use a directional cork when we get into step 1. If you want to use something directional like this horse print right here, you're going to do it a little bit differently. In the pattern on page 1 for your A piece only, so just for your outside, you're actually going to cut it in 3 pieces because you're going to sew it together a little different and to keep your pieces upright. I'll show you how to do that, and I'll show you a finished wallet that has a directional print so you can see what I mean. So we'll go over this in the next step. I have my zipper here. I'm using a number 5 zipper. This is the type that I use in all of my bags, and I love it for this wallet. Anything that you can sew over and trim is going to be important. So if you want to use a number 3, which is smaller, or a number 5, either is fine. I just would suggest not using a metal zipper for this unless you are very well versed in working with them. When we get to the pocket, you will see where we're going to sew, and I think metal would make that a lot harder. So I'm using a plastic zipper. I also have my fabric for my credit card pockets. I accidentally left my house without what I needed today. I make mistakes just like everybody else. So normally I have a very lightweight stabilizer that's actually for garment making. That's something that I like to use. That is something that would be included if you purchased a kit on the website. This is something new. I haven't worked with it before, but I was in a bind and I had to run to Joann's and see what they had. So this is called cambric or cambric. This is a non-fusible, which is what you want. It is a very, very lightweight, almost sheer, and it says that it's good for dust bags, or if it kind of reminds me of the stuff that you would put underneath like a piece of furniture that you were upholstering, or if you turn over your couch, that piece that's under there that kind of covers the springs. So that's what I'm going to be using today. We're going to hope for the best. I have not used this before, but basically for your credit card pockets, you want something lightweight, you want something non-fusible, preferably non-fraying. You could use fabric strips. I did in some of my earlier demos, and it works. It's not my favorite. You can also use ribbon. I have a spool of ribbon right here. This is polyester. So this is the 2 1/4 inch ribbon, and I haven't opened this one yet. I have used ribbon. I just did not use this kind, this particular one. So this is fairly thin. This is going to get kind of thick as we get into the folding part, but again, I've also used this. There's a lot of alternatives. You can search around on YouTube and find some different videos of different substrates that people like to use. So we're gonna try this out for today, but the one that I really like, and I will link that in the information, is actually a sew-in interfacing. You use it for cuffs and collars on garment making. So that's what we're gonna use for today for our credit card pockets. I also have my ID window. This is clear plastic. It has the paper still on it. I leave the paper on. This is going to be for the ID pocket. And then I have my tape, of course. I have a couple different brands of tape. This is 1/4 inch. You can also use 1/8 inch. You just want something non-fusible. We are not going to be ironing any of these bits and pieces today. This tape is going to be really important for this wallet. So you definitely want to grab yourself some non-fusible 1/8 or 1/4 inch. I prefer the Wawak brand, W-A-W-A-K. If you have not ordered from them before, they are a sewing website. I like theirs. This one is one I haven't used before. It's Bowen. I'm going to try that out today, see if I like it. But anything that's non-fusible is going to work for this. It's going to be important for the zipper, for the outside pocket, as well as your credit card pockets. So you definitely want to have this around. I do also have clips because I always use clips when I'm making a bag, and those are going to be very important as well. As far as my closure, I am going to be using my rivet setter, and I'll show you in the next part the snap that I'm going to use for my wallet, but you can absolutely use a twist lock. You could use a magnetic snap. You could use a button or Velcro. This is your wallet. You have a lot of options. Again, I did not include information on this in the pattern. The reason is there's so many options, and as we are growing and maturing as bag makers, we all have our preferences. I love a twist lock. I absolutely adore them. I use them on a lot of projects, pretty much anywhere that has a flap, and I do have a twist lock on one of the samples that I made of this wallet. I think it's great. For today, I wanted to use a snap and use my cam snap, and I'm going to show you how to do that when we get to that part of the video. Any kind of closure that you're going to use is going to be added at the very end when your wallet is finished. So if you are undecided on what you want to do, you can wait until the end to make that decision. As long as you're not sewing anything in, which I would assume most of you would not, you would be using something like this. As long as it's something like this type of hardware, you can wait until the very end to make your decision. So twist lock is totally fine. I will not be putting that in today. I have my top stitch needle. This is a 9014. This is what I'm going to be using to do my sewing. I am using my domestic machine, my Janome Skyline S9, and I only need 2 feet for today. My G foot, which is my blind hem foot, this is what I call my 1/8 inch foot. and also my E foot, which is my zipper foot. That's all. I will be using the G foot for pretty much the entire project. There is no 1/4 inch stitching in this project. Everything you're going to do is 1/8 inch, whether it's top stitching or, I'm not going to say seam because there's actually no seams in this, but we'll say the end stitching, the assembly type of stitching. Everything will be 1/8 inch. So I will be using those feet. I have my thread here that I'm going to use. This is Aurifil cotton 40 weight. I like this, I like how this looks on the cork, and I like the weight of that. Of course, I have a small ruler. That's going to be helpful when I get to my credit card pockets. Some different marking tools depending on what color cork I'm using and where I'm marking on it. These are removable. This one is not. This is a silver vinyl pen. Of course, I have scissors. I have my rotary cutter. I'm going to use my rotary cutter not only to do all my prep work, which I've already done, but I'm also going to use that for the credit card pockets. I would highly suggest either a rotary cutter, or you can even use an X-Acto knife. I know a lot of people like to do that before scissors, because scissors are not going to give you the cleanest, straightest cut, and you're really going to want to do the best job that you can with that. I start with my rotary cutter. I finish the ends with my scissors, but I try not to cut the entire piece with my scissors. And when we get there, that'll make a little bit more sense. And then of course I have my seam ripper stiletto combination. This is from Hannah Woodworking. I love this. And let's be honest, I'm probably going to have to rip something out at some point. Plus having a stiletto around is a good thing. So those are going to be all of the basic supplies. Now let's go into some of the optional things that I'm going to be talking about today and I'm going to be using. I have here my cam snap press. I'm going to be using that to install the closure in my wallet today. I'm going to be doing one of these type of snaps instead of doing a twist lock. So I have here the fashion snaps. These are size 20 or 12 millimeter, right from Cam Snap. I obviously just need one, but it is a 4-piece snap, so I just have them all together. I also have the 4-piece die that I'm going to need. That is totally optional. You don't have to do that kind of closure, but in case you were wondering, I will show you how to install that at the end of the video. I also have a handmade tag. I like to add that on to all of my projects. I have a pack of rivets here. I might add some of those as I go as well. I do also have the dies for my cam snap. Remember, each time you use your cam snap, you'll need a different die set for whatever you're putting in. So the dies that I'm using here for my snaps are different from the ones for my rivets. I just don't have those sitting right in front of me. I have some strips that I cut from my leftover cork that I'm going to make a handle out of. I have done a wrist strap on this for the one that I'm carrying, but I haven't done a full handle. So we're going to kind of play around with that together today. Because I'm going to add a handle, I also grabbed some D-rings and some swivel hooks. Those are all in 1/2 inch. That is the size that I'm going to make my finished piece. So we're going to kind of work on that together. And then I also have my templates here, and I want to go over those. I'm going to be using the acrylic templates that I designed, but again, you don't need to do that. For each of the steps that are going to require, or that you could use a template, I will also go over how to do them without a template, but I wanted to show you because I'm going to be using mine in this video. So in the back of your pattern on pages 9 and 10, you do have your flap template and you do have your card slot template. There's also measurements for the card slots, so if you don't want to use this, you don't have to. When we get there, I'll show you some of the different options for that. I do have an acrylic template set available for the Jane wallet. This is my flap template. You'll notice that this also has the ID window. I figured if I was doing this in acrylic, I would also add that part for you too, so you can easily trace that. All of the measurements are in the pattern, so it's not necessary, but doing this in paper just didn't seem quite sturdy enough, so that's why I did it on the acrylic templates. There's some placement lines and then your window, and that's for trimming your flap. And then there is also a credit card slot template. I will go over how to use this to get perfect credit card slots. If I was doing a twist lock, I would be using my twist lock template guide right here. I do like to use that whenever I'm adding a twist lock or a flip lock. And then I have my zipper template. This is the ultimate zipper template. We are going to be adding a zippered pocket on the back piece, and I like to just use this. I'm going to show you how to do this in the video, and I'll also show you where you can find the measurements if you don't have this template. All right, I think that's everything, so let's get into step 1. For step 1, you're going to need your A and C pieces. Those are the largest pieces of cork that you have cut for your wallet. One is for the outside and one is for the lining. I also have my flap template. You can use your paper template from the pattern or the acrylic template, and I have a marking tool. On the back of both of those, I've gone ahead and made my marks. They're both the same, so I'm just gonna move one out of the way. So I've started my marking. I have my flap right here, all marked out. I am going to take this over to my cutting mat and use my acrylic template and my rotary cutter to get a nice smooth cut, but I wanted you to see where your markings are. So I have my flap cut, and then I have these sections. So in the pattern, it's going to label this down here where your straight edge is. This is going to be your front section. This is going to be your middle section, and this will be referred to as your flap section. The reason that we've done this is because of where each of the pockets will be placed. It's much easier to have these lines marked out. If you're using directional fabric, which we will get to in just a minute, I do have those 3 pieces of cork cut out, and I'm going to show you how those will be assembled. For the rest of the video, I'm not going to be using the directional cork, but I just wanted to show you so you could be clear. So what I've done is I've marked my flap in the biggest section. These 2 sections are the same size. This one is slightly larger. That is where the flap is going to go. So after I take this to my cutting mat, I will just be trimming on here, and I will also be trimming this one as well. On my directional cork, and I have a wallet here. This is a finished wallet that has directional cork. It's not as obvious as the horses. The horses you can definitely tell right and wrong and up and down. With this, there are some stems for the flowers, and I wanted to make sure they were all going upright. So if I had cut this as one solid piece of cork, right here, something is going to have to be upside down. I'm either going to have to make the flap part upside down or the bottom part, because I'm not going to be able to use one solid piece. So what I did instead is I cut each of my sections, my flap, my middle, and my front, into 3 separate pieces. Those sizes are included for you in the pattern. So you'll notice here that the horses are upside down, and where the flap is cut is on the bottom of that print. I have my middle section, which will go just like that. And then my top, my front section, is actually going to go upside down as well. That way, when I fold my wallet together, I have brought all of these pieces in the right direction. So my flap is going to come down and be upright. My bottom section here is going to come up and also be upright. And now everything is going in the right direction. You'll see on here with my flowers, this is upside down and this is upside down until I put those together. And now everything is right side up. So what I would do is take this over to my sewing machine, and I will sew, I will sew this with a 1/4 inch seam, but I'm not going to be sewing any other seams in this entire wallet 1/4 inch. So this would be the only one, this would be the only exception. So I would sew here and sew here 1/4 inch, and then I do like to press my seams open and use my pressing clapper and get that nice and flat. As far as the lining is concerned, I do not piece the lining. I do still make the markings on the lining. So my lining piece, my other piece of horses would look just like this. I would mark that. The top of the horses would be here. So this would be totally upright. This has seams, so I actually know where the sections are, so I don't have to mark them. So that is how you would handle if you had something directional. If you have something that's not as obvious of a direction like this one, you could just let it go. But just in case you wanted to use something fun like this, I wanted to show you what your option was. And you don't need to purchase any extra cork. This is all from the same size that the pattern calls for. So I'm gonna head over to the mat. I'm gonna cut these 2 pieces, and then we're gonna start marking for step 2. I trimmed the flap sections of both of my outside and lining. I'm done with these for right now, so I'm going to set those aside. Next thing we're going to work on is going to be our outside front pocket. I'll show you where that is on the wallet. That is going to be right here on the front, underneath the flap. That is piece B. So on the back of piece B, I drew a line as per the pattern, and I'm going to grab my fusible tape, my non-fusible tape. I don't know where my brain is today, but I keep saying the wrong words. My non-fusible tape, and I'm just gonna put a piece right on here, like that. Grab my scissors. That's hanging off the edge here, so let me trim that. All right, and all I'm gonna do with this, push that down, take my paper off, is I'm just going to fold this down to that line, just like that. I'm just making a clean edge. I chose to do this pocket as a single layer to keep some of the bulk down and also to not waste too much cork. Wanted to make sure that that was nice and easy to do. So now that that's stuck down, I can take this over to my machine. I'm just gonna top stitch this top edge 1/8 of an inch. This will be all done. Piece B is all top stitch. So I just did the top edge here. That is the one that I folded down. I top stitch 1/8 of an inch. I've grabbed my piece A and I'm going to add B onto A. So I'm gonna turn this over and add my B right here. So this right here, this might seem a little bit backwards, but remember, this is the piece that's going to fold up like that and be underneath the flap. So we want the straight edge of our A and the top stitch edge of B in the same direction. You're going to use the measurements in the pattern. It's going to tell you where to place it. And I've already done some marks right here so I can see. And I'm just going to add a few clips like that. And I'm going to stitch around the edge, the bottom, and the other side using an 1/8 inch seam. I finished adding my pocket. This is my B pocket onto my A piece. My top stitch edge is right here towards the straight part. This is the flap section down here. I stitched the side as well as the bottom and this side using an 1/8 inch seam. So now that that's done, we're going to add our zippered pocket. So on the back here, I've already done my drawing. I've already drawn the lines in. I started my measurements from this line right here, marking my middle section. If you have directional cork, that would be a seam, but for me, it's just a mark. I found my center so that my rectangle would be centered. You're gonna follow along in the pattern for your sizes. And I've marked right here this extended line. So I measured from this bottom corner of the box down. I made that line, and that is going to be for the gusseted part of your pocket. So when you're looking at the wallet, again, here's your pocket that you just stitched in. On the back here is the zippered pocket. And instead of just doing a regular straight zippered pocket, I wanted to do a little gusseted coin pocket. I like how that looks. So what you're going to keep in mind is that whatever side you want your gusset on, if it matters, which it probably doesn't make much of a difference, but I always do it on the left-hand side. So if I want it on the left, I need to mark on the right because whatever I do here is going to be mirrored. So I marked mine on the right so that it will be on the left when it's finished. I have that marked. I'm just going to take this over to my cutting mat and I'm going to cut out that box right there. You can also use your zipper template if you want to use this to do your marking. If you have that, you have your center line. You're still going to mark your center on your piece. You're going to mark inside, and you can do some of your cutting with this as well. I'm going to grab my cutting mat, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut. I'm cutting almost all the way to the end. I don't want to overcut, so I would rather finish this with scissors. So I'm just gonna cut the majority of that box. I also like to do this. You don't have to. It makes some people nervous, but I take my rotary cutter right down on the end line and I just kind of push that down like that. And then I'm going to also cut this line as well. So I'm going to try not to overextend, and then I will use my scissors to finish cutting. So I like to do as much as I can. I just find that it's such a smoother cut when you do it with an X-Acto knife or a rotary cutter. I'm not as skilled with an X-Acto knife. I've seen some people do amazing jobs with them. Not me. I would rather just use the rotary cutter. So let's get that one little snip. There's always one little piece that doesn't want to come. Okay. So now that that is cut, remove this. So that's what my piece looks like. I have my rectangle cut out for my zipper, and I also have that little part down here that's going to be for the gusset. So that is prepared, but before I can add my zipper in, I need to curve one side of my zipper. So I'm gonna grab my zipper, and I'm also gonna grab a pin. So I grabbed a pin. The most important part when you're doing this is you wanna make sure that you curve the correct side. So if I'm looking, and I like to look at the front side of my piece because I'm looking at the front side of my zipper, I have my opening right here. If my zipper is going in like that, I need to curve this side. If I curve the other side, it's not gonna go in correctly. So the top part of my zipper, which is this part of the tape, that stays straight. The bottom half is going to curve down. So I'm just gonna open this up and I'm going to pinch. I kind of just pinch that roughly a 1/2 inch maybe, and then kind of pull that over. Or you can just take it and twist. But I've been doing this lately where I just give it a little pinch and then kind of pull that over, and that seems to be working pretty well. I'm gonna add my pin and take this to the sewing machine and put a few stitches right here just to lock that in place. That is going to go into that bottom section. So that's how that's gonna look when it's done. So I'm gonna head over to the machine and just put a few stitches in there. So I have my zipper prepared. I did a few stitches right here, trimmed up the ends. I grabbed my non-fusible tape and I also grabbed my gussets. So for the next step, we're gonna turn this over and you're going to add some tape to hold your zipper in. Just gonna put a piece right along the top edge right there. And on the bottom, I try not to go all the way to this edge. I'm maybe like a quarter, a little over a quarter from that edge. I just find that it helps me a little bit more. That way I'm not getting too much tape in my way when I'm working with the gusset and the zipper. I'm also going to take one of my gussets. I do like to do these separately. I tried to put them in all together, but it just did not work. One time it worked and then the next time it didn't. So rather than make it a nightmare for everybody, I'm gonna show you the easier way to do that. So I'm just gonna work with one of the gussets. I am placing a piece of tape on the wrong side, okay? And for this, I'm just going to put this right there, get rid of that, get all my paper out of the way. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to place my zipper. I'm gonna put that right side up on my table and zip it as far as I can, zip it closed. I'm going to place my pocket on top, and what I want is to keep my top edge as straight as I can. And you see how it kind of wants to veer off a little bit? I will come down here and straighten that out. I want the top part of my zipper as straight as I can get it. And on the bottom part, I'm gonna turn this over and I'm going to push that so it's down into this part. This is that extended little slit, which I did not finish cutting. So on the back here, I'm just making sure that my curve is going down, and there is my little extended part right there. It's not coming past that. It's not going, too far. I still have a little bit of a corner here, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of pushing that down. I'm going to take the first gusset and I'm going to put them wrong sides together. So I have my tape here, and what I want to do is put that right there so that the curved part of my zipper is sandwiched in between. So you'll see that it's about in the center. It's not perfect, it doesn't have to be. I don't want my gusset all the way up to the top and I don't want it all the way down to the bottom either. I want it somewhere in the center. So I'm as centered as I can be. I have my zipper in between. At the sewing machine, I'm going to sew. I'm going to start here, go across the top, down here, across the bottom edge, and I'm going to stitch down this first gusset. When I get to here, I'm gonna stop, come back, and I'll show you where to add your second gusset. I stitched the two longer edges and the short edge down here. I did use my zipper foot and I went very slowly as I did this turn right down this side because I wanted to make sure that I caught my little gusset. And sometimes trying to sew around this, you're trying to go through the curved part of the zipper and kind of jump over that and then make a turn down. It can get a little annoying, I guess, with your machine. Sometimes your machine doesn't want to go forward. So I was using my stiletto as I was working and just kind of taking my time, probably the slowest stitching that I have ever done. I just want to really be careful when I get down there. So now I have this part of the gusset in. I also opened my zipper because it was easier for me to get my hand in there to kind of manipulate. Now that that's in place, I just have to finish stitching right here, just this longer side, and I'm gonna add gusset number 2. So I want gusset number 2 right sides together with this one right here. So I'm going to add just a small piece of tape onto one of the right sides, like that. And I'm going to place this on this side. I'm pushing it in about 1/4 inch so that my tape is not hanging over into the opening. I'm aligning the top and bottom, and you'll see that these are now not lined up. And that is supposed to happen because you cut these the same size. I found that it was easier to do it this way because everybody is going to have a little bit different placement. So I would rather have them uneven, do a little bit of trimming when I'm done. So what I've done is I just push this down with my tape. You can see from the front, they are not in each other's way. I can finish up this sewing. So I just need to do my 1/8 of an inch stitching right here, and then I'll show you how to finish up that little gusset part. When I went to the machine to finish my stitching, I started right here. So I had gone down and stopped here. I started at the bottom of the little gusseted part, took a couple stitches and went up. My foot did want to get caught right here on my zipper because I'm trying to go over a thicker part. So I did hand turn a little bit and I used my stiletto just to make it over. Other than that though, it came out great. I'm super happy with that. So now to finish this up, I'm just going to turn that over, trim up the end of my zipper. I don't need that. And I can trim a little bit here too if I want to. Just like so. Metallic zipper leaves little metallic pieces everywhere. So the last thing you're going to do is close up your little gusset. So what I like to do is just grab a clip and hold it right here because I want to keep this gusset flat. I don't want this to get kind of weird and make too much of an opening at the end of the zipper, if that makes sense. If you pull these edges together, you see how it's kind of pushing the zipper. It's going to make the pocket so it's never totally closed. So I just like to do it like that. I'm going to sew this edge 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm just going to trim off that excess, and this will be done. Stitched 1/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to trim off the end of that gusset. Everything is nice and flat. And I can open up my zippered pocket, and there it is. I've got my little gusset, so I've got that ready for my change. Now I am ready to move on to my next step. For step 5, we're going to be working on our credit card pockets. This is piece D right here. I have my credit card fabric. I also have my scissors, rotary cutter, and tape, and I have a marking tool. In your pattern, there is a template. You're gonna wanna go ahead and cut that out, and you can cut each of these little slits out right here. You can use this to do your marking by simply placing it on your piece like this and just taking your pencil and marking inside. If you would prefer to use your ruler, you can do that as well. The measurements are provided for you. For today, I am going to go ahead and use my acrylic template. And I just want to show you the difference in the two of these. So what you'll see here is that your top edge is going to be about the same. Your lines right here are much thicker on the acrylic because it is made to accommodate whatever marking tool you have and also to use your rotary cutter inside of it. So what you're going to do when you do your marking or your cutting, and I am going to do both. I like to do both because again, I don't want to overcut, and I like to start with my rotary cutter and finish the end with a little snip with my scissors. You're just going to make sure that you're kind of pushing your tool up against the top edge. So there's the top right there. I'm just going to make sure that I'm pushing my pencil right now right up against that top edge. And on the end, there are marks for little punch, hole punches. If you want to add those, you can. I have done it both ways. In this finished wallet right here, I did go back in with my cam snap and I used the hole punch and I put a hole at the end of each of those. Just gives you a little bit more room when you're opening. I've also done it without them. The one that I'm carrying right now with all of my credit cards, I don't have the holes. I think it's really just a personal choice. And to me, it's more of the look than it is functionality. So if you don't have a hole punch or you don't want to do that part, you can totally skip that. So I've gone ahead and I've done all my markings. I want to do those again so that when I cut with my rotary cutter, I know where to stop when I finish it up with my scissors. I am just marking from the straight edge. So I'm not marking the little holes. If I want to, I totally can, just in case I decide that I want to go back in. Always nice to have options. A couple things to also keep in mind with your piece right here. Remember that you're going to fold this and you're going to have your raw edges folded up towards the top part of your wallet. This is your finished edge right here. So if you want your credit cards facing in a different direction, just make sure that you mark accordingly. I have my credit card pockets on the left, so I'm marking on the bottom left of my D piece. If I wanted them on the right, I would mark on the bottom right. If I mark them up here, I'm going to kind of turn it all around. So I always just mark on what I call my bottom edge when I'm looking at it. That way, when I fold it up, my card pockets are going to be here on my left-hand side. That's how I like that. You can see that's how that looks when it's all finished. And inside of here, if I put my hand in here, that is where this fabric is going to go. So if you've done any of my other patterns, whether they are fabric or cork, all of my card pockets have always been separate pieces that we've cut out and sewn together. Instead of doing that, I wanted to try a different technique. This is not a brand new bag making technique. You may have done this with other patterns, but it is something for me that is new. So I wanted to add that into this pattern. So now I'm going to show you how to use your tape and your fabric to get this all set up. First thing I'm going to do is my trimming. Again, I have my template, so I'm going to use my template to do my trimming. I did go ahead and mark a center line right here. It's not necessary if you're using one of the templates, but if you're using the measurements in the pattern, you are going to need that center line. I just like to have it there anyway. It's kind of just habit. But when I place either of my templates on here, it should come right to that line. If it does not, you have your piece turned. Your piece is wider than it is high. So make sure that you are marking this correctly. Otherwise, when you fold this to finish it up, it's not going to fit quite right in your piece right here. It's going to be fine. You can work around that, but it's going to be a little bit taller than you really want it. It's not the width so much as it is this direction. So just make sure that you are making your marks on one of these longer edges. So it's wider than it is tall. So now that I have them marked, I am going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to trim. And I'm just going to move off this little bump here. Again, making sure that my rotary cutter is on the top edge of my line. So I'm just cutting with my top edge. You can do the same thing with your paper template if you want to. You can absolutely cut through that. And now if I want, I can go ahead and add the little holes at the end. I'm gonna skip that for now. It's not super important to me, so I'm not gonna do that. So that's how my piece looks right now. I'm gonna take my scissors, just finish up, and just snip right to the end of each of my lines. It's just maybe 1/4 of an inch that I can't really get my rotary cutter into. Plus, again, I don't want to overcut. Now I have some taping to do. And I'm also going to grab some washi tape. I will show you where I use the washi tape if it helps you. It depends on the foot that you're using when you get to the sewing part, but I'm going to show you how I use this on the front to help me out. So first things first, on the back side, I'm going to take some pieces of my non-fusible double stick tape, and I'm going to start down at the bottom. And I'm going to put it on this top edge. So I'm calling that the top edge. I guess it could be the bottom edge, but if I'm looking at a pocket each, working from my way up from the bottom, I would call that my top. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape right on that line, right where I cut, just like that. Do the same thing for all the rest of them. If you don't have tape, you can still do this, but I am highly suggesting that you use tape for this step because it just makes it so much easier. We're going to be doing a lot of folding, back and forth, accordion folding. And if you don't have tape, it's just going to take you longer and you might have your pieces not be as perfect as you want them. Trying not to extend too far out. The fabric that I'm working with is about 1/4 inch wider than my cuts right here, which is totally fine. I really wouldn't want to go any wider than that. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to keep my tape nearby because I do use that as I'm going along. I'll show you when we get there, but I just find it's easier to just start right here. Too much tape just gets a little overwhelming. So before I even bother to put any of this fabric on and show you how to do that, on the front side, I'm going to use a little bit of washi tape. And the reason is, if you notice right here, I can't see any of those cuts. I have to get real up close and really close and kind of push them apart to see them. So when I get to my sewing machine, my foot is going to kind of block what I'm looking at. So if I take some washi tape, if I can open it up. So I'm just going to take a little bit of washi tape and I'm going to place it right on the edge here, like that. That is the very edge of that side of my pocket. And I'm going to take another piece, not that. And kind of fold this up so I can see it. And put my tape right there. So this is just a little temporary fix that's going to help me when I do my sewing. I can see this a little bit more clearly so I know where to start and stop my stitches. And then I know that my thread will be even and it'll just look nicer. All right, so for our card slots, first thing we're gonna do is peel off the bottom piece of tape. So we're gonna peel off the paper, take your fabric, and there's no wrong or right side to this, so you don't have to worry about that. And you're gonna place that right at the top edge of your tape, just like this. And I'm always kind of looking to make sure that I am straight. I don't want this to start veering off. It's very easy to do that. So now that that's in place, I'm going to turn this over, and from the front, I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch right along here. So I did my top stitching. I put on my blind hem foot and trim up my threads here. So when you're putting your fabric on, your fabric is going to be hanging off the edge of your piece away from the rest of the lines. When you take it to your sewing machine to sew, if you're using your blind hem foot like I am, you're gonna flip it this way. So the fabric will be hanging off the edge of your machine and you'll be doing your 1/8 inch stitching right along here. So that's how that first one looks. It's all sewn in place. So we're gonna turn this back over and I'm gonna take off the next piece of tape. I'm gonna grab my little ruler and fold my fabric back this way. And I'm going to measure 3 inches from the top of that cut line. So from the top of the fabric. I'm gonna measure just like that. Okay. And then push that right onto that tape right there. Again, making sure that everything is as straight as can be. I have my tape here, so I'm just going to take a little piece like this, and I'm going to put it here. You don't have to do this, but I find that it just kind of helps me to keep everything straight. The one thing that I'm trying to avoid is having crooked credit card pockets. So if I keep that there, I'm going to turn this over and I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the next line. This time my fabric is inside towards the bed of my machine because I am top stitching right here, 1/8 of an inch from line number 2. All right, line number 2 is done. So where I am stitching is 1/8 of an inch below each of the folds, essentially on top of the tape that we put in place. So my tape is underneath here. There's number 1, here's number 2. Now this is already a pocket, but this one is not. So we're gonna turn this over, fold again away from the rest of the lines. I'm gonna throw a little extra piece of tape in there just to keep that where I want it. I'm putting it maybe 1 inch or so up from the bottom. I'm gonna fold that down, fold it nice and tight, keep it straight on the sides, and then fold it back towards the lines. When I fold this, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch, which can be a little challenging with the black fabric. If you have to mark that with your chalk pencil, you can do so, but I am folding that back 1/2 inch. Removing the next piece of tape and place that down. Now I'm ready to go back to my machine, turn this over, 1/8 of an inch. I'm gonna keep folding back and forth until I get up to my last one. So I've done all of my pockets. I'm at my last one now. I am gonna trim all these threads. There we go. So I really don't even need my washi tape anymore. I can take that off. Before I finish up though, I do still need to finish the top pocket. So once you get to your last line of stitching, this line right here, you're actually not done because this is not a pocket yet. You can see my fabric is still in the way. So I'm still gonna fold it just like I did before. Still gonna use my tape, put a piece right here. Make my little measurement. I'm just finding that it's easier for me to see with my ruler to make my little line and then to try to fold it. It's just a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to peel that off. Again, pull that down. Take one more final piece of tape up at the top because again, I want to make sure that I keep this straight. And I'm going to finish this pocket by folding like that and bringing it all the way to the edge. And I'm just gonna stitch 1/8 of an inch from that edge and then I'll be all set. Just got a little bit of threads here. So I've got a little bit of excess hanging off of the edge. I always cut my strip longer than I need it to be because even though you could piece it together if you absolutely needed to, I try not to do that. So now that that's hanging off the edge, I'm just gonna turn this over and I'm gonna try to trim it just slightly below the piece of cork. That way it doesn't hang out on the edge when I finish up my pocket. Trim all my little threads here. All right, so now that that is done, you don't really need to do any pressing or anything. If you find that your piece is feeling bulky because of whatever you used, depending on what it is, this is completely polyester, so I would not iron on this, but you could iron a little bit on your cork side and put your pressing clapper down, but mine is pretty flat. I'm happy with how that came out. I would definitely use this product again. So now I have a few options. Definitely like these better than the ribbon, but ribbon is also a great alternative if you don't have these nearby. So now that this is all set, we're just going to close this up. Because the raw edges are going to get sewn in to this piece later, I don't feel like you need to close them right now. If you want to, there's nothing wrong with doing a little extra stitching, but I'm gonna skip it for now. So I'm just folding this with my raw edges together, adding some clips, and I'm only going to sew on my folded edge. I'm just gonna top stitch it, just like I have on this one. So I'm going to just take this to my machine and do 1/8 inch down that edge, and then I am all set with this and I'm ready to move on to my ID pocket. All right, for step 6, we're going to work on piece E. We're going to draw out the window on the back and also make some marks on the opposite side. So I am gonna go ahead and use my template. If you don't have a template, that is fine. There are measurements provided in the pattern. So what I'm going to do is over here on my bottom left-hand side, I'm going to use my registration marks on my template and line that up. In your pattern, there is not a template for this. There are just measurements given. So the pattern is going to tell you how wide by how high. It's also going to tell you how far from the side and the bottom. And again, before you draw anything, remember to double check. Your piece should be wider than it is high. You don't want to turn your piece the incorrect way. So now that I have that, I'm also going to draw a line 3/8 of an inch above here from one edge to the other edge of the window. I'm just using my ruler and just drawing that line. All right, and then on the opposite side, directly across from where I'm going to cut out this window, I'm going to use my template to also mark just like this. And I'm just going to make a little mark in the corner, and that's going to be placement for this piece. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my window right here. Just using my template as a straight edge. I just find it a little bit easier than trying to cut inside. It just never seems to work quite right for me. I'm always at like a really weird angle or I'm constantly turning my piece anyway. So I'm just gonna cut out my window. Again, use my scissors to finish my cutting. Just get right into that corner. And there we go. I am not throwing this piece out. I'm going to show you where we're going to put this piece. And this line that I drew right here, I'm also going to cut that out. So I want to just cut that right there. Now on the opposite side over here, I'm actually going to place this piece because when my window is ready, just like that, that piece will be in there and it will look really nice and finished. I won't have to worry that I'm gonna have the back part of the cork showing. So again, I'm gonna grab my double stick tape and just place some. You don't need it all the way around the whole piece. Oops. This is just to hold it until you get to your sewing machine. And I'm not putting it all the way on the edge because I am going to use my 1/8 inch stitching. So if I can avoid sewing through the tape, that's good. If I can't, that's okay too. So I'm going to align that just like so. So now that is ready to stitch. I stitched my little piece of cork in place, and now I'm going to go ahead and place my clear vinyl. So I leave the paper on the back. I find that much easier to sew. Then it's not getting stuck on the bed of my machine. So to place this, I'm still going to use my tape. I know that's probably shocking to some of you at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and just place some tape around here. Again, this is just to hold this in place to get it to the machine. So you don't have to go crazy with the tape and put it all the way around the entire piece. I'm just going to do it just on those sides right there, kind of trying to center it so it's not right on the very edge. I'm going to peel my paper off here, and I'm going to place my window with the clear vinyl side down. I don't want it to be higher than this cut line. So I want to make sure that it is slightly below there, kind of centered. So that's going to put it right on the edge right there and not above that line, which is good. This is going to be where your ID will slip when the pocket is done. So if this is up above it, you're either going to have to trim it or redo it, which is not fun. So I'm kind of roughly centered here. I'm going to stitch all the way around from the front side. I'm going to go all the way around the inside of this window, 1/8 of an inch. I'm all stitched around my window. Now I'm going to take the paper off because now I do not need it. So I just kind of fold the small edges in, run my fingernail across there, and then tear that. Just try not to pull too hard because I don't want to tear any of my stitches out. Get as much as I can. So I've got the paper out. I'm going to go ahead and finish up this pocket. I'm going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, and I am going to clip all the way around. I find it easier for this piece because we have to do some extra stitching. I like to clip the top folded edge as well. This little piece kind of wants to stick up, and I just think it's easier to take it to my sewing machine, all clipped. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, top stitch 1/8 of an inch all the way across my folded edge. And then I'm going to stitch around my ID window except for the top. I want to make sure that my ID has a place to go and it's not going to slide around. So I'm just going to follow my top stitching along the side, the bottom, and the other side. I'm going to leave this part open. I'm not going to top stitch across there. Obviously, my ID would have nowhere to go. So I'm just closing up the sides and the bottom and then top stitching across here. So I'm going to go do that and I'll come back and show you how that looks. I'm not having the best sewing day. My sewing is not great, or maybe it's my cutting that's not great. I'm not really sure, but we all have off days. So if you have an off day, just know that you are not alone. I would say that this is not my most perfect, but you know what? It's totally fine. I am human. So now you have proof on video. So I stitched along the top here. I did my top stitching. My bottom edges are still open. I didn't bother to sew there. Again, it's going to get sewn into the wallet, so I didn't really see any point. I followed my top stitching down the side, across the bottom, and back up the other side of my ID window. So that is totally open right here. I have a place to put my driver's license. And I did go ahead and top stitch right here, 1/8 of an inch. You don't have to, but I just kind of felt like it needed it. So I did that. In hindsight, I might have stitched 1/8 of an inch across here, but I don't really think it makes too much of a difference. So for step 7, we're going to start completing the wallet. So I've grabbed my lining piece C. This is just like the outside piece, except it does not have the zippered pocket or the open pocket. And I have my ID pocket that I just completed. This is going to go on the bottom edge right here. So on the straight edge, I have my nice top stitch edge facing up towards the flat portion. I'm just going to grab some clips here. And I'm going to clip this in place. Get this ready to take to my sewing machine. And before I head to the sewing machine, I'm also going to grab my credit card pockets. I'm going to place my credit card pockets on here. I have my folded top stitch edge facing down towards the ID pocket. So both of my nice edges are right here. So in the pattern, it's going to give you the measurement between these two spaces, which you can absolutely use your ruler and do that. Or if you turn this over, you have your line right here for the top of your middle section. You can also align it right there. So I've got the edge of my pocket lined up here. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, making sure that everything is straight. I'm going to head over to the machine and sew 1/8 of an inch on the 3 raw edges of my card pockets and also the 3 raw edges of my ID window. Okay. So I've got my pocket sewn in place. I did trim a little bit. One of my pockets shifted, and so I just turned my piece over and just used my rotary cutter to trim. I like to do that as I go instead of waiting until the very end, which you absolutely can do. I just kind of like to do it as I'm going. It's the same thing with my threads. I like to kind of trim them as I go instead of waiting until the end and just having a big pile. So now I'm going to take my outside and my lining, and I'm going to put those wrong sides together. Remember, we are not turning anything. This wallet does not have finished edges, so it's not going to be put together, sewn, and turned. This is how it's going to look when it's complete. So I'm just going to go ahead and line everything up, grabbing my clips. And I'm just going to clip all the way around. All right, so I'm ready to sew. So far, my machine has been completely fine. I have not had any issues with the thickness. If I get down here and I find that I have any issues, it's probably going to be in this area right here, because as you can see, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of cork right in this section. It's only a few inches, but if I find them having any issues, I may change to a bigger needle, or I might try a different foot. What I'm going to do is not start right on that. I would not start on the thickest part of the wallet. I'll probably start over here on a side and start sewing around. Like I said, if I'm having any problems, I can skip that area and come back to it later, try some different things out. But so far my machine has been heavy, or has been happy. It has not been heavy. It has been very happy. And I have not had any issues with this machine sewing up to 6 layers of cork. And since that is 5, I think it's going to be just fine. But I'm just going to take my time and see how that goes. Other than that, I was thinking about possibly adding some heat transfer vinyl behind this zipper. I don't know if I'm going to or not, but I thought that might be kind of fun when you open this up, instead of seeing the back of the cork, to see some vinyl. Do I want to do that? I think I do. I think I actually do. This was not planned for today. So I am going to have to unclip now that I have it all clipped in place. See, this is how decisions get made sometimes. I've been playing with heat transfer vinyl, making the little notebook covers, and I'm kind of having fun with it. So I have it sitting in front of me. I'm going to throw a piece on here. I'm just going to cut it and put it in between my 2 lines right here, and we'll see. If I don't like it in the end, it's just a sample. So I'm going to grab a piece of probably hot pink and just throw it in there and see what happens. Well, I did it. It's very pink. I may cut this part of the video out, so I might just be talking to myself right now. You might never see this, but it was just a thought, and I wanted to see what would happen. So let's see. All right, I'm going to clip this back together and head over to my machine and do my stitching, and then we'll be just about done. All right, I am all sewn, so I am actually just about done with this. I do have a little bit more stitching to do, and I'll show you where. I had no problems with my machine. I did go through even those thickest parts down here where there is the ID pocket and then the open pocket on the other side. I did not have any issues. I didn't have to change my foot or my needle or anything. So as I noted in the pattern, and as I mentioned earlier, if your domestic is not a fan of, thick bits, which again, there's up to 5 layers of cork in just a little spot, but it still have to get through it. If your domestic is not okay with that, you definitely want to make some changes before you get to that point. What I would do, and it is noted in the pattern, is I would make each of these pockets an inch narrower. So instead of being the full width of your lining and outside, I would make them an inch narrower. That would give you enough room to kind of center them. The only difference that's going to happen is that this portion right here and this portion right here are going to get a little bit smaller, but it's not going to affect anything. You still have plenty of room. Let me grab, I have a credit card right here. And when I put my credit card in this pocket, it's coming to right here. So I definitely have room if I need to trim this down at all. And over here, I'm not putting anything on that side of the ID window, so I would just leave this as is and trim down there a little bit. But if you are not having any issues, then you're good to go. And I did not have any problems, so I'm happy with that. Okay, so we have a little bit more stitching to do and then we're done. It's time to do the closure, and then we will play around a little bit with a handle option at the end. So in order to close up your zippered pocket, right now this zippered pocket basically goes wherever it wants to because the top and bottom of it are not closed. So in order to finish that up, you are going to have to do just a little bit more stitching, and I like to do it from the lining side. So I'm just going to stitch one more time on top of this stitching right here. This is the raw edge of my credit card pocket. And then I'm going to stitch right next to this part. Obviously, I don't want to sew through here. I don't want to close up this pocket. So I'm just going to run my foot right along that edge. Those two lines right there will close up my zippered pocket. So I'm going to do that and come back, and then I'll show you what I did inside my zippered pocket. I'm pretty excited about it. I added that little bit of extra stitching. So again, from the lining side, I sewed on top of the raw edge of my credit card pockets. I sewed right on top of the stitching I had done earlier. And then I stitched right below where the open part is. So my stitching is right here, right below that pocket. So you almost can't even see it. On the back, you can see my stitching goes right across there, and it comes right down across the bottom of where my gusset is. And now I have to just show you this because I'm really excited. I put the pink heat transfer vinyl behind my zipper. You don't have to do this, but if you have watched my notebook cover video, you know my new obsession with heat transfer vinyl. They do make it in all different colors and prints, so you don't have to do anything wild and over the top like I did, but that's just kind of who I am. And it goes with my zipper. So I just think it's kind of fun. Now my coins have a really pretty place to play. And when I put them in here, they're not going to float around because without that stitching, my coins could basically go anywhere. So that is pretty much it for the wallet. It's done as far as the stitching is concerned. Now it's time to move on and do our closure. So as I mentioned before, you can put on whatever type of closure you want to. I am going to use my rivet setter, and I'm going to add in a snap. If you want to put in a twist lock, I'm not going to put one in, but I will show you just how that's going to look. You can see on this one right here, I did put in my twist lock, and just like you would put in a twist lock with any other piece, you're going to put the open half on your flap right here. And I put that pretty low. I don't like to go through the top stitching, but I like my twist lock pretty low. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch or so from the edge of the flap. And then what I like to do is find my placement based on what's going to go in my wallet. So if I am just going to carry my cards and my ID, which is what I have in this one right here, if that's all I'm going to carry, I want my flap as low as I can get it. I want my wallet as small and as tight as I can get it, if that makes sense. If you are going to carry your phone, and a lot of people do like to put their phone inside their wallet, you're going to adjust this wherever it needs to be to accommodate your phone and your case. I don't have a really thick case, but I do have a pop socket, which takes up some room. So once I get credit cards and everything else inside of here, this is too tight. This is just not going to work. So I would put the other part of my flip lock or my twist lock or my magnet up a little bit higher. So that's all that I'm going to do. On the back of this piece, because this pocket is one single layer, I did add an extra little scrap of cork and my washer, which is back here. The washer is in the back so it doesn't scratch my phone or whatever I put inside of here. And I do have my scrap of cork. You can glue that down, or you can just cut the slits in it like I did, but just to give it a little something extra to grab onto so it's nice and secure. This wallet, I did not take into consideration my phone. I made it as tight as I could. So you'll see my flap is pulled down nice and snug here. For this one, I'm probably going to do the same thing. I don't usually carry my cell phone in my wallet. I usually have it on me in my pocket or, in my coat. So I'm just going to fold this up, and I'm keeping the bottom edge of my pocket, the first pocket we sewed in, either right at or very close to the fold of the wallet. And then I will pull my flap down. And when I do that, I love how that looks, how it's nice and tight. The flap covers pretty much everything. That's how I'm going to put my closure in. So I'm going to put half right on the flap, and I'm going to then mark on the other side where that other piece is going to go. So first thing I'm going to do is grab my rivet setter. All right, I'll turn this so you can see it for now. Let me grab also my die set, which is right here, and my snap. So this is a 4-piece die set because the snap is 4 pieces. And on my pieces here, I'll show you, I put little X's on the back of one half. That way I know that that half goes together. It saves me from having to constantly look and match them up. So I have my pieces here, my pieces here. I know that that is the cap. So that is actually going to be the first set that we use. That will be for the flap. And take my pieces out here. So these are from Camp Snap. These are the fashion snaps. They're size 20, which is 12 millimeter, which is approximately a ½ inch. So I've got my cap. I've also got my socket. That's for the front. I have a stud right there and the post. And that's going to be for the pocket. That's going to be for behind the flap. Move these out of my way. So first thing I'm going to do is drop in the bottom piece. That just sits in there like that. I don't tighten anything. This has the threads on it, so this is going to get screwed in here. Whenever I put a die in, I only twist it until it stops. I don't want to over twist and get it so that it doesn't ever want to come out. Ask me how I learned that lesson. So that's in. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to need to punch a hole in my flap, but I also need to mark the center. So let's go ahead and mark. And I'm going to use my cap here just so I can see on the front where I want it. How far up do I want it? Probably about the same, probably about 1/4 inch or so from the edge. So I'm going to find my center here. And just fold it and just put a little mark. And this is a heat erasable pen. So if I don't like the placement, I can always remove it. So unfortunately, I do not have my hole punch die, and I don't have my manual hole punch. So I'm just going to wing it with a stiletto. You probably don't want to do it this way, but you know, this is what happens when you sew in 2 different places and you don't have all the same stuff where you need it. I just came back from a retreat, so I am not 100% unpacked. So I'm just going to make a hole with my stiletto. And if it's not big enough, I'll just trim it with my scissors. It's not quite big enough. Let me see. This is called winging it. It's my specialty. So I'm just using my seam ripper to make this hole a little bigger. Just gotta poke that in there. It's tight, but you know what? Tight is good. I don't want my snap floating around. So I've got the cap, and then I also am gonna take the socket. So the back side of the socket is going to go on here. Just gonna put those together. Grab my press. The cap goes down. And give it a big crunch. Okay, there we go. That half is done, nice and tight. And now I'm going to decide where I want the other half. So I'm going to fold this. And what I like to do is just kind of get right underneath here, right in the center, make my mark with my pen. I think that looks pretty good. Now I am going just through the pocket. I don't want to go all the way through the rest of these layers here. So I'm going to grab a little scrap of cork. So I have my marking. Go ahead again, use my stiletto and my seam ripper and make a little hole just like that. All right, I grabbed a little scrap of cork. I'm also going to just put a little hole in that too, because this is only one layer of cork. So I just want to make sure that I have enough durability for my snap. I am going to be opening and closing it a lot, so I don't want anything to happen to it. I switched out the dies on my cam snap. So I'm going to take my post, which is the back, that's going to go through my piece of cork, just like this. I'm going to put that now through the hole that I made. So I've got my post coming through here. I've got my stud on the front like this. This is a little awkward because my pockets are done, but I'm just kind of folding it back out of the way, get it on there, and there we go. All right, so fold this up, and there we go, it's all done. My wallet is all done. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing else that I really need to do to this wallet. I've got all my pockets in, everything is sewn, so I can just close this up and be on my way. But if I decide that I want to add some kind of a handle, whether it's a wrist strap or a longer handle, I can do so. The reason I did not write it into the pattern, the reason it's just included in this bonus content in your video is because for me, this is just a wallet. This is not something that I necessarily would want to carry on my body. I don't like things that open totally flat while I'm carrying them, but I understand that some people might want to do that. So let's talk about some of the options that you have. What I did is I just cut my scraps. These are my leftover pieces of cork, and I have them all prepped and ready so I can make a handle. Now, I did make this little tab right here. This was just a 1-inch piece of cork that I folded in half. You can see I didn't sew it totally evenly. That's all right. That's what trimming is for. So I just folded this in half so that it would be a 1/2 inch finished. So this is 1 inch by, let's see here, about 6 inches or so. So I have this. So what I would do is put this inside of here, and I'd probably put it right up here above these card pockets with some D-rings. So I have my D-rings, and I'm just gonna fold that over. Let me grab my clips. And this is gonna be very similar to what we did in the Charlotte, if you've made my Charlotte bag. So I've got that, and I can just add that right here above my card slots. Now, I can definitely sew through this. I feel pretty confident that my machine would get through this. However, there is right here where I folded over on the D-ring, there's 4 layers of cork going through 2 right here. So I'm not super crazy about that. Plus my foot is gonna be a little awkward trying to get around there. I could definitely try to sew it. One of the other reasons I might not do that is because back here I would see my stitching. So for me, if I was going to add this piece in, I think I would rather just rivet it. I think it would be stronger, and I think that it would look a lot nicer, and I would see my rivets on the back side. So I could definitely add something right there if I wanted, and then use these straps right here, or these strips, excuse me, and make them into a long handle. I could even add a slider if I wanted to make it adjustable, add some hooks, and I can just hook that on and then remove it when I don't want it. That is option number 1. I can also take this little piece right here and I can cut it down, cut a little chunk off right here, and just right there, rivet that in. I could even rivet another one on the other side if I want them hanging out, make a little strap and hook that on, make that into a wrist strap. So there's definitely some options that we can do. I'm just trying to think which one I want to do. And what I'm thinking is if I add my D-rings on either side, yes, they're going to hang out over the side. But if I do that, then I can use this with a wrist strap and a long handle. I kind of have 2 different options here. So I think that might be what I do. Let me just check here. Yeah, I've definitely got some room here. My flap is not tight up against that pocket, so I have some room here. So I think that might be what I want to do. Now, here's the other question. Do I like how the D-ring looks hanging out the edge when it's finished? I don't mind it. It's not my favorite, but I don't mind it. Now I'm rethinking. See, this is what happens, and this is why sometimes things are not included, because it's really hard to make a solid decision. I'd love to hear if you guys are adding a strap or a handle or anything onto this and where you're adding it. If you're in the Facebook group, please post a picture. Otherwise, you can always email it to me. Ooh, that might be a more fun option. I could always put my wrist strap through there. Well, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do it and we're gonna see what happens. This is what happens when you make decisions kind of on the fly. We're gonna see if it was a good decision. So I'm gonna grab my rivets I also have my rivet setter, and before I go too far, one of the other optional things I wanted to add was my handmade tag. So I think I want it down on this corner, and that means my washer would be back in this pocket, but it's so far down on the bottom, I don't think it's going to be an issue. What I will do is probably cut a little scrap of cork just to cover that up. That way, if I do put my phone in there, it's not going to get scratched. So let me grab a little scrap of cork. Doesn't even have to be the same cork. All right, get my marking tool, and on the back here, whoops. All right, and on the front, I think that looks pretty good. Just kind of winging it here. All right, and my seam ripper. Let me find that. All right, so I'm just gonna take my seam ripper, cut, put this through, put it right side up. That would help. We don't want our handmade upside down. That would be silly. Now I have to get my fingers in here. Sometimes you make decisions and then realize later they weren't the best decisions. But that's okay. I'm just letting all of these people witness me making bad decisions, so no big deal. All right, put this on here. And I'm sure some of you at this moment are probably yelling at your screens, telling me better ways that I could have done this. I should also cut the holes in this. Or hopefully you're just laughing along with me and saying, yep, I do the same thing. So, we can't be perfect all the time, right? I think perfection is totally overrated. And sometimes just being yourself and being real is the best way to go. At least that's what I'm gonna try and convince myself as I struggle to put this piece of cork in here. Okay, there we go. My goodness. All right, push that down, push that down. Okay, handmade tag is in place. That was not easy. That should have been easier. Yes, I know, I should have put it on earlier, but I didn't, you know. Okay, so I think my decision is made. I have not done this before, so I don't even know if I'm gonna love it, but I'm going to put my little handle that I made inside of here with my D-rings. I think that's gonna be the best way to go. And then I'm going to make a handle out of this. So for this, I just folded it in half. You can see there's a raw edge. So if I put my raw edge down, you kind of don't notice it. For the handle, I want it to be a little bit more substantial. So I cut these strips 1.5 inches instead of an inch. That way I can fold them 3 times. That's something that I really like to do. I will show you in case you haven't done that before. So at my sewing machine, I am gonna sew these together. I'll probably sew them like this at a 45-degree angle, trim, and then press that seam open. And what I'm gonna do to fold it into 3s is take my ruler and I'm just gonna mark 1/2 inch. So I'm basically just marking 1/3, which is the finished size of my handle, 1/2 inch. So fold it. Okay, so I have my 1/2 inch marked. I'm gonna use some tape and some clips. And I just put my tape, let's see here, kind of right in the middle here. This is 1/4 inch tape. Like that. And then I'm also going to put a piece on this side. Again, not right on the edge, but close. Okay. And now what you're gonna do is peel off the paper on the side that's further from the line. And you're gonna fold this to your line like that. If your tape isn't sticky or if you don't have tape, just throw some clips in there. Same difference. I just like using the tape because then it's all set and I can just head to the machine. All right, I folded my first part. Now I'm gonna pull this off and fold that over, just like that. Now I'm not gonna keep folding because I do need to sew my strips together. So I'm just going to pull this tape off just a little on the end and open this up just so I can sew that together. But I wanted to show you how that looks. So I'm gonna sew these pieces, make my long handle and do my top stitching. I'll come back and then we will use the rivet setter to put our D-rings in. All right, my handle is all stitched. And before I do anything, I'm actually going to get my rivet setter set up here to do some holes because I'm going to be pretty much riveting everything from here on out. My handle to the hardware and then also the handle to the wallet. So get that all set up. And first things first, so I have my handle here. Had a little mishap with the tape. So in keeping on theme, it's not the best sewing I've ever done, but oh well. So I'm gonna trim this. All right. I'm going to rivet that together. So I'm gonna put a hole using my press. I should probably mark it. I'm gonna mark where I want to put my hole. It's always better when I know what I'm doing. You know, I try. So, get that lined up. Okay, now that is 6 layers of cork. Did it go all the way through? It did. Okay, so that is ready for a rivet. So I'm gonna put my rivet die in later after I have all of my holes punched. So I'm just going to put my rivet in and temporarily snap it together while I'm waiting. So that one's ready to go. And then I'm going to add my swivel hook on here. That's gonna stay loose. This other end is gonna come up and over. Will I still have clearance? Probably not. All right, I will wait. I'm gonna wait on that one because I have to get my rivet in there. Okay, so I told you we are flying by the seat of our pants today, figuring this out as we go. So here's my little strap. I'm gonna use some clips to get this ready. Just need to make sure I have enough room to make the hole. I'm gonna clip it over here. And same, make sure those are fairly even. All right, so that is going to get riveted right here. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I think what I'm gonna do is mark some spots on the strap, and then I will know where I want to put my rivets. So my strap is now about 5 inches long. So I'm gonna put one in the middle. I'm gonna have one down here, obviously. Do I want any in between? I don't think so. I think I'm good. Yeah, that's enough room. All right, so let's mark that. I'm actually gonna measure and do 2 inches. All right, so that's 2. And there's 2. Okay, so just so that it doesn't move while I'm trying to put a hole in it, I'm gonna put a little piece of tape right here just to hold this. All right, that looks pretty even. Okay, so put a hole in the center. And a hole down here. It would be really helpful if I had one more hand. There we go. But I don't. Okay, my D-ring is going to come off. That's fine. All right. And okay, done, 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 and done. So now I can put my rivets in. Why are you moving? There we go. All right, that looks pretty good. So far, so good. We're gonna see. Got those little fuzzies everywhere. All right, change my die set. Alrighty, got these to set. There we go. It's just something about that crunch. I just love it. Rivets are one of those things that I didn't use for a long time because I was always doing them with a hand tool and I wasn't happy with how they looked. And now I want to put them in everything. It's like I'm making up for lost time. So, oh, that doesn't look bad at all. Okay, all right. Good thing. I'm making the decisions for you, so you know. So there's my rivets. So that's totally fine. I think that looks kind of cute above my zipper. I could even do some out here if I wanted, like, to make it decorative, if I wanted to add a couple more. But that looks pretty good. So let's finish up this. I've got this one waiting. Okay. And got my swivel hook on. I'm gonna go up, back over, and do a little trimming. Add my last swivel hook. All right. I'm gonna have to punch my hole again, which means I have to switch my dies out. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I should have done that one, and I didn't. All right, there we go, done. Okay, so let's see, now that I did all this, do I like it? That's gonna be the most important question. And if I like it, do you like it? So I'm gonna lengthen this a little bit. I didn't make this super long, so it's, in hindsight, not the most adjustable handle. This was two, I believe, 18-inch strips. Let me see. I want to make this as long as I can and see if I wasted my time putting a slide on for nothing. That's not too bad. I mean, it's not going to be crossbody, but, you know, whatever. It's fine. Like I said, this is bonus content for a reason because I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm just kind of winging it to show you. I'm going to show you all the mistakes so that you can not make the mistakes. That is just the kind of person I am. And my swivel hook is stuck. That happens sometimes. Let me grab pliers. Fun fact, in case you didn't know, the plating process that makes these rainbow, it's actually a double plating process. So sometimes the little hook sticks. Let's see. See how this one's kind of sticking? So I just take my pliers and I grab this part right here and I just push it. And now it works great. It's just one of those things that you learn as you start carrying hardware in different colors. Happens to the gunmetal sometimes too. Okay, strap is on. Fold this up. Well, that's adorable. Okay, I am eating my words right now. That is the cutest little tiny purse. I still don't want to carry this as a purse. I still don't like that it opens all the way up when it's on me, but I totally understand. Like, this is adorable. I can just throw this over my shoulder or tighten it up. I could tighten this up like a little wrist strap, make it really small. All right. For those of you adding a little strap, I get it. I'm gonna try something here. Before I make a separate wrist strap, which I totally could, can I just make a little weird one? Maybe. I mean, I can do anything I want. Is that super weird looking? Yes, it is, but that's okay. All right, well, we did it. We did it for better or for worse. Added a little handle. It's adorable. I'm not gonna lie, it is adorable. And just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's not for somebody else. And now that I did this, I'll probably be thinking about it over and over again and deciding it was a good decision and I wanna make it for the rest of them. So the good thing about this, if you are working on this at home and you don't have any hardware, you have, your rivet setter, but you don't have swivels or D-rings, I added it at the very end, and so can you. All right, so there it is. I've got my handmade tag. I've got my little swivel hook. I am good to go. Thanks for sticking around for the bonus content. I think that's gonna do it for now. I'm so excited. I love my new Cork wallet. I cannot wait to see how yours come out. If you like videos like this, don't forget to hit subscribe, click the little notification bell, and give it a thumbs up. Until next time.